Oh, we don't need a transcript. Okay. So, how's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing well. Thursday, we're almost there. Almost there. To the end of the week. So I guess to get started, we approved June's meeting minutes, which are, if everyone got the agenda, this should be attached to the agenda. And so I guess we'll call for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Nice. And a second.
Second.
Great. All right. And so if all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? No. All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve those minutes. NOFO update. So I don't know, everyone should know, but if not, the NOFO notice was released on the 5th, as Wendy so aptly said. They love a holiday release. And so for everyone coming back from their holiday time, we get this 129-page document. That's just the notice, not the application itself, of course. So we are I urge everyone to go through that. We're going through it right now to make sure there's no surprises, to see what opportunities there might be this time around. We're still pretty early on in that, but we have been working with Tim Scythe, who's on with us right now. He helped us out a lot last year, and now this year is helping us formalize a full process of the NOFO from all year round. So that way, the idea is from start to finish and off season, that there is a formalized process that, if, like Raphael likes to say, if we all win the lottery and leave our jobs and go live a life somewhere on a boat, that someone can step in and take care and do this without any issue. So if that's all right with you, Tim, I'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's do entire screen. I've got two screens. All right, great. And then you guys can see that. You should be looking at yourselves right now. Is that what's being shared?
Unfortunately, I'm looking at myself.
Yeah, you're all looking great this morning. You're all looking great. So yeah, this is what I want to kind of run through today is, as Greg said, I've kind of been brought on board to kind of bring just kind of like planning and kind of best practices to what we're all doing and trying to document this over time. So I'm going to be pretty short and sweet today. I just want to run through this. First of all, this is the NOFO process improvement plan. As you can see across the top, there's goals. The first goal is document a standard operating procedure for the NOFO process to create institutional knowledge. And this is across all your organizations in a way. It isn't just for the city, but the idea here is, how do we take kind of these bits and pieces of know-how that are kind of tucked away in the corners and then bring them into centralized documents so that we can transfer the information. It's easier to onboard people. It's easier to, just to kind of have some continuity and then improve processes over time. The second one is clarify NOFO roles and responsibilities, the lead agency, the NOFO work group, and the funded agencies. I'll talk about timing on this a little bit later, but the idea here is let's just kind of take a step back and say, hey, who's doing what when? What are our responsibilities? Who's accountable for what? And also, what are the ways that we can improve process? Are we all delivering what we said we're going to deliver on time? Are there things that we can move to less stressful times of the year? Things that just help us kind of run the process better. If we can do those two goals, that should get us to number 3, which is improve our applications overall and improve the COC functionality overall. The idea here is, how do we just make this process more fluid, address as much friction as we can, and which leads us to point 4, which is reduce stress, which I think we all can say is, hey, that's a good idea. The timeline is, there's 3 phases, and this is what we'll be seeing, these 3 phases that we've as we go through the template. I'll share the template with you as well just this morning, but right now we're in the application phase. This starts when the NOFO application is released, which happened on July 5th. This is going to be Q3 of this year. Document the application process, draft the NOFO timeline template, draft roles and responsibilities, and complete application. The thing I want to emphasize here is point 4 is we're going to be working on the application itself. So there's going to be a lot of listening and documenting between now and when we submit the application. We're not going to do full on roles and responsibilities and all that in the middle of this, because that's just a lot to ask, because we might, once we do the roles and responsibilities, we might find that there's some more significant changes, and we don't want to do that in the middle of the process. So once we complete, or once the NOFO is submitted, that's when what we're calling the off season starts. That'll be Q4 and Q1 of next year. Document the off season process, refine the draft of the timeline, refine roles and responsibilities, and draft a NOFO workgroup standing agenda and annual work plan. That standing agenda and annual work plan probably is going to be nested within the overarching timeline that we have. I'm not sure it's going to be completely different. I do want to emphasize that this is all a sketch of what we're planning to do, but as we do the discovery work, take notes, learn, this all likely will evolve. And then that leads us to the third phase of the cycle, the preparation phase.
That I had in mind, it does require a degree from Mark through.
And then this is the preparation process would be like the phase 3, and this starts when the COC competition registration is opened. So we would just document the preparation process, refine the timeline some more, refine the roles some more, and then refine the standing agenda. So this is kind of what we want to do, for the year. It's an annual plan. It's going to be like intermittent engagements, right? Like it's not going to be, we're doing this every week. I will be working primarily with the core city, like the lead agency team, until the application is complete. I'll maybe be dipping into some of the NOFO work group and things like that. But right now it's just, how do we document as much as we can from the lead agency perspective, and then get ready kind of for the off season, which is more where the strategic work will be done on the clarifying. I imagine there'll be some work groups. We'll be having some conversations about who's doing what when, and again, accountability and responsibility. Are there any questions about this before I zip through the timeline? Questions, comments, concerns?
Tim, I would just say I love this. I think this is a good idea. We've long struggled with what the NOFO work group focuses on, especially on the off season. We know that there are things that we can do to prepare for the NOFO, and it just feels like every year we're in this, like on this hamster wheel. So I would recommend, as you're gathering feedback about what the process is and what it could be, to talk to folks from the NOFO work group. There have been, I think, some good ideas generated from that group, but the implementation has been a struggle. So I just want to put that out there, that in addition to the lead, I think the work group members have some good information that would be helpful to improving this process.
I mean, absolutely. I think I see kind of the two primary, I guess, parties in this as being the lead agency and the NOFO work group. I mean, the funded agencies are going to have the things they need to deliver for the application, but really the people who are pushing the application through is the lead agency and the NOFO work group. So yeah, Emily, absolutely. That's like the NOFO work group is gonna be right there with us as we go through this. So we will take you up on that for sure. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, if I could just add, I certainly agree with everything that Emily just said. And I would also add, for those of us on this body, as well as the board of directors, I think not necessarily having consistent communication or updates relative to this process or the work of the NOFO work group leaves us a little bit sort of in the dark. And I think if there can be part of this improvement plan that includes regular updates and communication, and maybe that's a standing agenda item on this body's meeting each month, but just so that there is ongoing, regular, consistent updating and communication, I think would help all of us be supportive of what the lead agency and the NOFO work group is doing, because I know they are active throughout the year as well and really ramp up when the NOFO is released. So just the communications part of this, I think, would be good to be very explicit about.
Great. I made a note of that and I'll add that. One of the little curveballs I have is actually a 16-month-old curveball, and I split daddy daycare duties with my wife, and so she's a nurse, so her schedule's all over the place. But they've been landing on Mondays, which is when you guys meet. My daycare days have. So I think this is one of these things for the leadership group and the NOFO work group that I will put together a plan for the regular communication as we go through this. I wouldn't even mind maybe doing a little bit of a brainstorming and documentation process specifically with a NOFO work group when we're in the thick of things. Like, I don't want to add a bunch of extra work, but that's also when we're in the thick of things seems to be when we know what's going, when we remember all the little details, right? So I would imagine in August, in a couple of weeks, I might try to pull aside a time and just to sit down and like I said, is do a download and I'll pick all your brains on that. So I will put a communications note in here and we'll make sure we'll integrate that at least on a monthly basis. And then as well as, like I said, I'll probably put a brainstorm or brain dump timeline with you guys all. Great, that's great feedback. I can show, this is the work product so far that we're working on. So, off season, we've got a who, we've got a start date, we've got an end date. Things in red are hard deadlines. The idea right now is, this is where I feel like we can sit with a NOFO work group and be like, all right, what needs to change in here? What needs to be added? What should be moved to different phases? This is just a draft document. The idea being here is once we get a template put together, we should be able to have status updates here on the far right. And then you just duplicate this thing for next year, right? Like, the idea is you would duplicate the tab and like continue. I mean, obviously process improvement year to year is always good, so you can make changes. But what we want to do is get all these little details organized in a way that we can see who's responsible for what and what their statuses are. So this is one of the I would say, like, this is the core product so far. I don't think this is the only final product. I think there's going to be some element of a like a visual too, like a little bit of a schematic as to what the flow is and how things move. And I'm not sure what form that'll take yet, because as this stuff fills out, like, I think the way that we document that and share that will become more clear. I think thus far, so thus far we've got something like, we've been working on a little bit like this, even sketching out the phases. Off season, who's responsible for what when. It might be like this, it might not. So I'm no promises on this is what the final product will be, but I do want to have a couple ways to communicate what we're doing, because spreadsheets are good for organizing, but they're not always the most communicative tool. So that is, I'm going to just stop sharing because it's actually can't see any of you when I'm sharing, because for whatever reason my app isn't working. So I'm doing this in the browser. So I'm just talking to this inanimate camera here. But that's the plan. So, I mean, really it's working with, like I said, the lead agency. Emily, your point about like the NOFO work group as being, I see you guys as being the second headquarters on this, if you will, the second font of knowledge, wisdom, and whatever sort of brilliance that you guys might have. But we're certainly going to plan on coming through, I think, in August. I mean, it's already the middle of July, so we'll time on that. Any questions or concerns about comments, feedback about what I just shared?
Tim, would you be able to, or maybe, I don't know, Greg, if it's ready yet, but I would love to have that spreadsheet timeline. And I'm also just thinking, I don't know if are NOFO meetings currently bi-weekly, or
We
they're
just
only
changed
monthly?
to weekly now. Yes,
Okay, good.
with
That's
the release
other
of
thing that's on your mind. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll be meeting again on Monday until the application's submitted.
Okay.
Right. About sharing, I mean, I think we can share the spreadsheet. What I would like to do, the only thing I'm hesitant of is like, there's a little bit of method to the madness. So, things I'll talk about is all the items start with verbs, right? In some ways trying to do action-oriented items and also trying to compile these things. And the other reason I'm a little bit like, I might want to share it and be there because it helps me learn about the process and as a fresh set of eyes. I think what we maybe could do is share maybe a copied version, and people could like throw ideas in there if they want. Because that's what you're kind of thinking, Emily, is to add to it. I mean, I'm assuming that's what the hope would be, right?
No, I'm thinking like tangible for this application, knowing what we need to get when, and I know it's not finalized, but I think having that document to because it's, I mean, like you said, it's already the middle of July. this next 8 weeks is going to go super, super fast.
Oh, absolutely. I think we absolutely, I mean, I would say specifically here, I'm going to go back to sharing, share screen or tab, share window, share you all, lots of clicking, sharing. I think this part right here, right? I mean, this is, you know, this isn't the area that we could like probably most pertinent right now. I think I mean, yeah, we can certainly share even like a viewable, you know, maybe it's an uneditable version of this, but like that's what you're talking about, Emily, I think, which is, and that's very pertinent, right? Cool. We will get that taken care of as well. I'm gonna write it down over here.
Thank you. Because I do think it's kind of a parallel process, and I think it makes sense to make notes as we go through, like, oh, this wasn't soon enough, or this actually could have waited.
Yes.
But I also know that a lot of our focus is going to have to be on just getting this in, you know, getting it done. And then maybe we can soon after it's submitted say, okay, so how would we refresh this timeline? I guess my proposal is that we don't futz with the timeline too much, and don't worry about that, but really worry about getting the application in and making notes as we go.
Yeah, we want to like right now when we're in the thick of it is when we notice all the details, right? Like, and like the last thing y'all want to be thinking about is the NOFO application process in February.
Right.
God no, right? Like if we can avoid that, if we can, you know, if we're going through the pain points right now, let's write that down, document those types of things. So we'll get something shared out to you guys as an orientation process. Take notes. I will say you know, like whatever you need to just spit out there and get out into the world, whether, you know, put enough context so that you can remember what it means later. But any notes you have on process about this would be, because anything we can do before the application is even released, right? If we can shift this stuff out and be, hey, like off-season preparation application, and just make it like a more fluid process, that's going to help everybody. It'll just less to do now, less of a crunch. Cool.
Tim,
right.
just one
Yes.
other comment. In that timeline, I didn't get a chance to catch it, so I'm just curious. Are there within that timeline the required by HUD sort of public notifications relative to funding availability and proposals and all of that? I didn't see that, but that doesn't mean it's not in there. But something to.
I'm going to share my screen one more time because
Okay.
we have this ability. Let's, you guys are looking at yourself. Is that what I'm assuming? Is that what these are? Like notify public applicants that they will be accepted and ranked, post rankings on a website? Release scoring criteria. Is that what you're referring to?
That may be part of it, but I think, if I'm remembering correctly, HUD also requires that there be notification about if there's opportunity for new projects or bonus projects, that there be public notice so that we're fulfilling the HUD requirements as to an open and transparent process. I mean, there's also the notices to the renewal applicants. So I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost, because sometimes that's an afterthought, and then I think we're rushing to ensure we're putting public notices out as required. And just to make sure it's part of the standard operating procedure, I think would be helpful.
Public notice for new projects. And then I'm just going to
I know the renewal one is in there because we made sure of it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it often isn't relevant because other than bonus projects, there aren't generally opportunities for new projects to apply. But just so we don't misstep and forget something that HUD is requiring of us as a COC.
Yeah, and that's super useful information, right? I'm gonna just drop it in down here so we make sure we don't lose track of it. Okay. And I also will say, like, I am not a subject matter on this, like, and you know, there's nothing more jargony and obtuse than trying to engage with HUD with something you don't know about. I also do the consolidated plan for the city of Milwaukee on HUD. So that's that trauma starts in a year and a half for me. So I'm still learning this, right? So that's one of the reasons why I want to be able to soak it up with you all and understand, because you all have like a subject matter expertise I don't have. So Tim, I added that as an item in the timeline. We'll make sure we get it in the right spot. And like I said, this whole process is going to evolve. So just thank you for your participation and your patience. Hopefully it's going to be a bit of a muddle through this until the off season. I feel like we'll do some strategic work about like really clarifying things once it isn't so front and center. And then hopefully next year, this would be like easy peasy lemon squeezy. So, anything else?
Fingers crossed. Wendy wanted to know if, and I think true, would it be able to the copy to be shared prior to Monday?
I think I can share this right now. If you guys give me a minute, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna publish this version of it, just this page, and then you'll have access to it. I think actually the whole thing here. Just give me 30 seconds and let's make sure this works. All right, yeah, let's just do that. Great. So let's go into here. So you all, and you guys can watch this be created in real time. Click on that link. Can someone make sure that opens? It's going to take you to a web page of this document. Right. So what you guys can do is when we make changes, you can throw darts at us. Be like, hey, I guys saw you updated row 25, and then you can come after us and you can you can give us a hard time via email. So that's the live document. That's how it's going to evolve. And you'll be able to look at that. And I think, Emily, this will address your issue of having that having that in order. Emphasis on, and I'll put this across the top, draft, tentative, all those things, right? Like this is a living, working document, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So a little bit of flexibility on that when you're making assumptions as expectations. If you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's been, I mean, obviously we've been working on this and it's been super helpful. I'm looking forward to it. And now that we have this document, I think it'll be a lot clearer for folks and for everyone involved in this process to keep up with us, keep up with the process, and so no one's in the dark, and so we get the right, proper feedback and everything.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more from me.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Sorry, Emily, I saw your message and then I was trying to.
It's okay.
It was but
yeah, no, we're okay.
Yeah, so this is the charter. Sorry, I'm looking up Emily's. So this is from the feedback from the full body and the youth advisory board and the lived experience groups. And so do you have the final draft updates for us on this? And then we can.
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there were 3 comments on from full body and both of those groups, the youth advisory or action committee and the folks with lived experience, the peer collective in its current iteration. One comment was just somebody saying, I approve. So that was nice. One comment was important but not pertinent to this charter, just noting the need for more youth specific services. And so we've made note of that, but it wasn't about the content of the charter itself, more about like, what are we doing as a COC and how are we prioritizing services? The third one was a comment asking to add substance use treatment providers in that list of recommended folks to serve on the board, the COC board. So with that was we added that bullet point, and that's the only comments that we got for revision, and added that point. I could pull this up if folks want to take a look at it one more time. Everybody should have it. And I think, Greg, the hope was to get this body to vote on this, and it will be going out for electronic vote for full body this month, and then ultimately to get the board to vote on it before we submit the NOFO application, so we could say that we have an active charter.
Yes, and when the next board meeting should be taking place before the NOFO goes out, so we'll be good on that. So yeah, do you want to give people a chance to give it a look over, or do we want to make a motion to approve?
I can just kind of refresh people's memories. So everybody should have a copy of this, but this goes through what our purpose is, the organization, our structure, the full body is the group that is the whole, and then the board is the governing body of the COC. We added here under recommended membership, collaborative service providers, we added the substance use treatment providers bullet there. Otherwise, nothing has been changed to this document since this group saw it last. And then we go through the 4 standing committees: COC leadership, the NOFO committee, coordinated entry leadership, and the nominations committee, and then a definition of what the work group is, and that work groups kind of are report up to a committee, and then ultimately to the board, and full body is us as a whole that votes on the most important things.
Emily, is there still opportunity to make suggestions?
Sure, yes.
And this came up in a meeting I was at yesterday, and it just sort of surfaced as I was noting that the governance charter was in the final stages of updating and likely soon to be approved. The suggestion, I thought it was in this document, and then when I looked at it again, I didn't see it.
Okay.
Under the recommended membership, either affordable housing developers or
Oh, yes, because we
or
have
the
housing
community-
authorities, but
yeah,
not.
or the Community Development Alliance specifically,
Mhm.
because that is their focus.
Yeah.
And I know in past meetings, we've talked about maybe extending an invitation to Teague to join the board.
Mhm.
But I was thinking it was in this, and then when I looked at it again, I thought, oh, it's not in there. Either housing developers focused on
Right.
affordable housing or the CDA. And something that I think might be, at least as a recommended membership
Mhm.
category.
What do people think?
Do you want to maybe think about making it generic enough housing type instead of a specific group? You can just somehow wordsmith some kind of housing representative. Public, not public. I mean,
I do think, Carl, I think it's important to note affordable housing development
Mhm.
or developers, because that is a category that is somewhat distinct from general
Just
developers. And
Mhm.
our emphasis is really the need for more affordable housing to be created. And I know that is the focus also of the CDA. I mean, the CDA is very specific. So, certainly if we put affordable housing development or developers, CDA could be included in
Could
that.
fit in that.
that's
And
perfect.
it also is mentioned throughout the NOFO too for our scoring to make sure that we're connecting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I added affordable housing developers.
Yeah,
That-
that's great, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I will I'll ask for a motion if there is one.
So moved.
This is Audra. I'll second.
Greg, I'll pass it back to you.
All right.
I don't know that I
I'll-
can officially ask for a motion, but I did
Yes.
anyway.
Well, I was going to ask for a motion anyway. Now that's documented. So, all right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, hearing none then, we'll move to approve. And now this goes on to the next phase, which is the full body vote and then the board, right?
Yes.
Greg,
And I
would that
apologize
be,
for being late, everyone. Thank you, Greg, for pulling us through the first 20 minutes of the meeting.
problem.
And then, yeah, I meant to have it approved by the full body previous to this meeting, but we were having trouble with SurveyMonkey, the platform that we were trying to use to make that call. But they were given a lot of opportunity for feedback, and given that we didn't receive a lot, I wouldn't expect there to be an issue with that approval.
so Greg or Emily, would this be on the September 21st COC board meeting? Or do we have another one before that?
Well, I think that that's cutting it a little fine to NOFO submission, and the thought
I
at our
agree.
last board meeting was that we would ask for an e-vote on this and ask,
Okay.
and they were okay with that.
Yep,
If
that
I
was my
remember right.
recollection as well. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks. I thought it was earlier. I thought for some reason, I thought it was in August, not September, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so this is great. I'm glad that we were able to adopt this, and thank you again, Emily, and everyone who participated in that work group over the last many months to get this work done. It's important work, and we appreciate you. And so, sorry, Greg, you can keep going. I don't need to come on and like take it over. You're doing excellent.
Well,
I'm sure.
Eric is had to step away for a little bit. So actually, technically, you're next on for the mini lab updates.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. So perfect timing.
Great. Yeah, so as the leadership committee is aware, we have been participating in the National Alliance to End Homelessness mini lab series on creating racial equity within a coordinated entry system. It's been myself, Erica Olson, Justina, and Nancy who have been attending those on a monthly basis over the last few months. I will be attending the in-person session at the National Alliance Conference in Washington, D.C. next month, and then we have a wrap-up session in August. It's been interesting. I think that sort of our takeaway as a group has been that we are actually a lot further along in this space than other communities are, which is awesome for us, but also we've been struggling a little bit to come up with some really meaningful takeaways based on this work for our community. But I think that in the last meeting especially, we sort of like honed in on a space that we could be working. So we have a plan to create and submit a survey, 2 versions of the survey for both people who are currently going through the coordinated entry system and past participants, people who are currently in our programs who were placed in those programs through coordinated entry, asking them about what their experience was like, and hoping to pull some feedback on how it is that we might improve things, especially from an equity perspective. The first step for creating those surveys and distributing them is that we have requested members of the POPIAB and the county lived experience group to attend a meeting at City Hall to help us create those questions. We're going to start with some questions that were created and distributed by similar work that was done in San Francisco last year. That is really interesting and really exciting. So we're starting using that as a jumping off point. We're going to request feedback and assistance to guide those questions from those lived experience groups. And then we will, of course, be requesting any help that members of this committee might, if there's, I don't know if people in this committee are interested in that work or would like to participate in a work group on creating that. But yeah, we're excited about that. And then I have a second part, but is there feedback or questions about that effort right away?
Emily, could you speak to how that will then intersect with the CE leadership body?
I guess I feel like I don't really know yet. I feel like we're
Okay.
sort of building this as we go. Nancy, do you have thoughts specifically about that? Or maybe Emily, I'm not sure if she's dropped off.
No,
I feel like we're sort of in the beginning stages where we just want to build it and, know that we want to do the survey and then what happens with that. What I think maybe it depends on what we see in the survey, what the outcome is.
Mhm.
But go ahead, Nancy.
No, I think getting the feedback from CE leadership, right? I think it needs to, we'll like kind of develop the blueprint for it, come up with the questions for the survey, create the survey, and then the CE leadership having more of their expertise and their feedback and kind of helping us support this this process move along. But I think in tandem, we'll work in the smaller group with the other committee and make sure that we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do, and then presenting it to the CE leadership, because I think it's important, right? That we always talk about communication and making sure that we're as transparent as possible. And so as we move to even just improving our system and making it a better process for both current and past participants, it's important that we have kind of all of the feedback. So once we have CE leadership kind of in the know of everything, then we can come back to this group and say, here's what the support that we're receiving, here's the feedback that we've received, here's the survey. I think it's important also, kind of like an open comment period, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's just, I think it'd be good to know how city leadership can be helpful and supportive in this process, because it is so important. And I think any ways that we can help would be, I hope, something we would be willing to do.
One of the things that I can do to sort of familiarize this group with sort of where we would like to move into with the space is the takeaways and the work that was done in San Francisco. Because I think that that's sort of, we would like to do a similar sort of go through of our coordinated entry system and how it's functioning and how it's working here in Milwaukee. So maybe that can help sort of orient this group to where this survey could lead for our community, if that would be helpful.
Yeah,
I
that
see
would be helpful.
some nodding.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that would be helpful to see what happened in San Francisco.
Yeah. And then the second part of that, and we're going to ask the same work group, we are tasking them with a lot in a day, but we are providing them with lunch. And so I hope that they will stay with us, is that one of the things that we have sort of identified was that we have done a good job as a coordinated entry system over the last couple of years, really making sure that we are casting our net wide for how and where people are surveyed for housing by partnering with like critical community partners, especially in the healthcare space through MPS. Through some of our justice system. However, we recognize, and I think that a lot of us hear this a lot, is that people who are experiencing housing instability or housing crisis don't always know where to go. And the people that they are going to are sort of their church leaders, their local community neighborhood groups, the local grassroots organizations. And even those organizations don't always know about coordinated entry or where to go first. And so we're sort of thinking that sort of our next space that we need to be entering is that we need to make sure that we are partnering with those more neighborhood focused or faith focused organizations, making sure that they know and understand how to access our coordinated entry system and housing, and then also asking them to partner with us to make sure that once people are in our system that we can kind of keep tabs on them, because something that happens a lot is people get assessed for housing and then they're like in the wind, we can't find them again. And so we're hoping to sort of model that a little bit after the, like during COVID, when they did the credible messaging program for vaccines. Maybe we could have some sort of a similar narrative and request from those community groups to the community and to our neighborhoods to make sure that we are like really comprehensively assessing and aware of the need that our community is facing for housing. So that's also sort of the next space that we're trying to enter. And we are hoping for help and feedback from that lived experience group on how it is that we might engage those neighborhood and community partners.
One suggestion, Emily, is to reach out maybe to the NSP lead agencies, the community organizing agencies. I know we're trying to do that relative to citywide public safety listening sessions that we're holding with the MPD and the Fire and Police Commission. And it occurred to us that we were improving our attendance in those monthly sessions in each of the Aldermanic districts when we began to better network and reach out to the NSP lead agencies. So that might be another point of connection to consider.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think that all of us are a little bit like not knowing where to start with that. So if there's members of this group that who have suggestions or are interested in doing that work with us, we certainly welcome them. So that's sort of like where we're headed on how we're making sure that we are. Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of our pathway here to look at the survey response, to engage these community partners as a means of increasing the equity within our coordinated entry system. So that's both something that we'll work on like in an ongoing way, and then something to write about within the NOFO process as well. Any feedback or suggestions? Does this feel correct to people? Audra gives a thumbs up. Great. So much enthusiasm. Well, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be interesting.
I think it sounds great.
Thanks, Claire. So this will also hopefully this will be our last virtual meeting. So these things will be easier to talk about in person in the future too. So. Did everyone read the minutes thoroughly? Did everyone catch my Easter egg at the end about Tim bringing the cookies? I put it in the note in the minute, so it has to be true.
That's true. It's
Interesting.
law.
I didn't catch that.
At the very
Well-
end in the announcements, when I said that we were going to go back to in-person meetings, at the very last line is Tim agreed to bring cookies.
Yeah, I still didn't catch that. Just
Well, you
kidding.
motioned to approve it, so now it's a fact.
It's approved, so yeah, we got. And if you do bring them, then we can put that in as another accomplishment. So you see, we proved it. We said we were going to do it. We did it.
Yep, there we go.
Let the minutes reflect, though, it did not say homemade cookies. It just said cookies. So there you have it.
I'll make that adjustment and correction to submit to the state. All right.
Well, safe travels to DC. Hopefully it's not like sweltering hot.
It's going to
but
be
it is.
absolutely miserable, but that's okay. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I was at that last year, and I did not leave my hotel. Just stayed in
Well,
my
I
It's
room.
can
always
practice my
bad.
street outreach in DC. I think I can handle a conference, right?
Yeah.
Parka during the day and tank top during the evening.
Yeah. All right. Is the very last thing on our agenda the request for an update on the encampment situation? And is Eric back?
Yes, and yes. At least.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, right.
Thanks. Sorry, juggling a few different meetings this morning. Yeah, I'll just be pretty brief. I think most of the folks on here know it's summer's always busy, especially this year. I think, I've been in a lot of conversations lately with our team and other teams. Some of you that we're sort of seeing this unprecedented, increase in certain spaces, and also just sort of the general acuity of folks we're engaging with on the street is seeming to be a lot. There's a lot of crisis situations. So I think a lot of folks in the outreach community are pretty burnt out. Still doing wonderful, engaging work with the support of all of you. Some numbers, and again, these are a bit rough. Total number on the street seems to be fluctuating between around 160, 180 verified, probably a little north of that. If you drill it down a little more, I just didn't have time to do that this morning. Probably pushing closer to 200 on some days, which, as you guys know, is high comparatively to the last few years. Number of reasons for that. As you all know, I don't have to tell you those reasons. I think the two major encampments, again, that most of you know about that we're dealing with are MacArthur Square at the courtyard and repairs of the breach on Valete. And between those two encampments, there's between 50 and 55 individuals. The courtyard is fluctuating around 25 to 27, and the rest are repairs. On the courtyard side, the city is starting to do their surveying work. And we'll be bringing trucks in soon to do something with the soil. It's beyond me. Their engineer was trying to explain it to me, and I understood half of it. They're also, I guess, making a good chunk of the courtyard ADA accessible. There's parts of the easements and parts of the city proper side that are not ADA accessible, and so they're doing that as well. They'll be moving the fence closer to Wells Street, and so there'll be still a small patch of grass left, but not much. So we're working with them to try to figure out the best way to go about this and serve folks there and see how much space is left after the fence is moved, and also try to get people in as quickly as possible. The repairs camp is a bit interesting just from a land standpoint, in that the space where they are is actually not owned by repairs. There's a private property owner. And then on the 1315 Valete side, which is where most of the individuals and tents are, it's actually city-owned land. It's a vacant lot. And they reached out to us. DCD does all the property management for those vacant lots. They're obviously very understanding and flexible and gracious about the situation. But yeah, we are going tomorrow morning. Our team, Outreach Community Health Centers, some people from Community Advocates, really early to hit the 2 encampments to sort of do all hands on deck to try to get some of this paperwork moving and shelter referrals going as well. I think that's it. Yeah, it's just really busy. We've been a bit short staffed on the outreach side. At the county, we've had a number of openings that we've been trying to fill. So that's played a role in some of our being overworked on our end. But again, I think, everybody's working well together. I think the coordination is at an all-time high. I think everybody is doing the best that they can. And I just want to thank, all the shelter providers, housing providers, all of you guys. I think there's been a lot of good collaboration lately. And yeah, we'll keep pushing, and I'll keep folks updated. If you guys get questions around certain things, always feel free to send them my way. Or if you want some other talking points or something like that, I'm certainly happy to do that.
Eric, could
Thanks.
you clarify the total that you were estimating? Is that specific to the 2 sites you noted, or is that inclusive of other locations that you may be aware of?
The 180, Tim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's everywhere. Yeah. There's the 2 sites are probably around, again, like 50 to 55 combined. Okay. And the rest are, there's a lot of, if you look at our street census, there are people everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got about a dozen or so just in our immediate area surrounding our main facility and our drop-in center. And our teams are working with them as best we can. And a lot of them are in cars, so they're not necessarily as visible, but some are under tarps or, doing makeshift sort of sheltering in some of the vacant lots surrounding our areas. So.
Yep. No, it's definitely probably one of the busier summers we've had in the last 5 or 6 years. So hopefully we can start to make a little progress here in the next month or so.
Eric, this is Andy. Do you have a sense of how many of the individuals that are out on the street right now are new to the system, and how many are known to us?
It's a good question, and something we've talked about pretty weekly. Frankly, we just haven't had the capacity on the outreach side to put that together. I think we can do that in the next couple of weeks. I think it's a decent amount. I will say though, too, we are seeing people that we've known for a long time, which is always concerning and a bummer for sure. What I would say, especially like downtown near West Side, we've seen a lot more sort of crisis situations where folks who have engaged the mental health system, especially with MHEC being over here now, folks who are brought in on a not even a chapter or even a chapter and then released several hours later. We're starting to engage them a lot, and a lot of our engagement during the day is not even about housing at this point. It's about sort of triage, figuring out the mental health issue. One thing to note, we got some outreach positions through the opioid settlement dollars at the county, and they're posted on the county website now. They close on the 16th. We're excited about those. We think those will help a lot, especially with the encampments where that is prevalent, and it is in a lot of spaces outdoors. So we think that should provide some assistance as well, just looking at medically assisted treatment and harm reduction from the outreach standpoint. So. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, I guess next would be announcements, if anybody has any.
I have one. Hi everyone. Our board is going to, we're just waiting on one more signature for our HMIS charter. That way it'll be officially passed, and yay. We then will work on sending out all agency partnership agreements based on the new policies and procedures that we have for HMIS. We will send those out. So thank you to everyone who has already confirmed who your contact peeps are. If you haven't responded and it goes to the wrong person, you have to sign it. So please respond and let me know if anyone's changed. If it's the same, then we'll just send it to that person. But thanks again for those of you who've already signed it or who've already confirmed or gave us the updates. And then after that, in August, we'll send out the new renewal for HMIS license usage. So if you have any new ones that are coming on board, let us know so that they can be part of the subsidized contracted amounts. Because you'll remember anyone that is over the contracted amount then is charged the unsubsidized amount, which is 300 versus the 75. We want to make sure that you have all of that in order. That's all I have.
Thanks, Nancy. Jessica.
Hi.
Hey.
I just want to point out that with this release of the NOFO, that they increased the amount that COCs can ask for planning from 3% to 5%. And I'm wondering if there is any plan to discuss with this group what the idea is for that increase in the planning dollars is.
It's a great question, and I don't have an answer to that. That's a rough
Is it an ask, or is it awarded from HUD just automatically as it has been?
So it says that you can ask up to 5% now, rather than the 3% cap is my understanding. So like there's lots of things that I know we've talked about, and maybe we could look at that as like within the ask. If we do increase the ask, what we would do with those funds.
Yeah,
and just kind of maybe involve this group and the NOFO work group in conversations about what could potentially happen with that increase.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely we should look into that, and then we can discuss it first at the NOFO work group, and whatever comes out of that, bring that to the leadership group for feedback and for ideas, and then move forward from there if it turns out that's something we can do. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, thank you.
Just so folks are aware, the board of directors has requested that the city present its budget for those planning dollars at our next board meeting. And that's a longstanding request. So I don't know how that influences input on that, but that is an expectation that the city will be documenting its budget relative to the planning dollars through HUD to present to the board.
Okay. It's good to know. I mean, we'll have to have it, especially with planning, we'll have to have it already kind of hammered out by then anyway, since the board meeting's right before the, the due date, so. Okay. Any other announcements, folks?
I have a question, I guess, or just wondering if there is any update that folks can make available relative to the item we discussed last month relative to Heartland Housing. I mean, there's been some recent press and some pretty negative comments made by some elected officials relative to that situation. I'm also aware directly of some escalating issues at Prairie Apartments. And I know Guest House is trying to stay involved in that, but there's been a pretty significant and noticeable increase in police presence there, in property destruction. I know there's now, it appears to be additional security posted outside of that building, but I'm just concerned given sort of the negative comments that appeared in the press and then what is visible at least one of those sites. And I don't know if that's true at others as well, but is there any update relative to that situation?
Sure, Tim, I could touch on a few things. Jessica can touch on St. Anthony's. And Mike obviously knows intimately about Prairie. They're moving to team property management. So a lot of the sites, since they're in receivership and they're in conversations with the equity investors and potentially new buyers, it changes daily. So some are looking at getting new property management on board first before there's a new buyer, because Habitat will be done at the end of July. Capuchin again is in a better spot because Cardinal purchased the building outright. It was, just to be transparent, a nuisance property with MPD from the previous ownership. MPD and community prosecution unit, city's attorney, are very thankful that there's a new owner. They expressed some concern about the previous ownership and lack of communication and stuff like that. So that's some sort of silver lining if there is any. And again, I think, now the city, so like Amy Turum and those folks are sort of overtaking the larger conversations. WIDA was a little bit, but they're sort of 30,000 feet level. And then with St. Anthony's, I know Jessica can give an update. We're pretty intimately involved on staff side, security side, working with the equity investors. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't. But yeah, I think to your point, Tim, on the media side, when there was that committee meeting last month, I think again, it's the communication that happened really should have happened 6 months prior to when it did to all of us from Heartland, and council members, rightly so, were upset, as were we, as they should be. And so I think there's a sort of a slow movement to try to right the ship, but it definitely has a long way to go, if I'm being honest. And Mike, I don't know if you had more details on Prairie. We've also gotten communication about the uptick in some of the calls and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I wasn't on top of the increased police presence or disruptions, and so I'm sorry to hear that. Guest house, we did remain there throughout this entire time. I had to pull the staff out last week, I believe it was, because there was no security or property management, and there were some problems with people coming into the building, gaining access through other clients or people, leaving the doors open. The good news, I guess, from our perspective is that I believe it was effective this past Monday. I was there. There is security now. It looks like at least 12 hours per day. And there appears to be a new property management team, as Eric indicated, in place. So I'm still trying to work with NEF, and I'm still trying to work with the new property management team to ensure, a smoother transition, and we can bring them up to speed as much as we can, our staff that are stationed there. But we did remain throughout. It was very difficult, and so our staff should be commended. The case managers, there are 2 individuals on site now, and they're doing the very level best they can. So that's about all I have.
And I'll just say from like the St. Anthony's and the other HUD grants, I mean, the HUD grants touch a lot of these different buildings because there's the tenant-based subsidy in them as well. It's really, as Eric indicated, it's the investors that are all different, and like based on the investors, I'm finding there's kind of a different outcome that's happening in these buildings. But from the St. Anthony's perspective, HUD is aware, the Continuum of Care is aware. There's many of the units that are not we're not paying for because they're not passing the housing quality standards. I did get indication this morning that there's going to be an influx of repairs that are made to St. Anthony's. So hopefully to get them up to par where they can pass housing quality standards. I think also what I've learned in this whole process is like the 24-hour security is really crucial to turn things around. So I would encourage that to happen too at Prairie, because it's, once a building kind of gets the reputation that it's a place that you can go to, then it's hard to like write that with all the influx of like outside guests, I would say.
Yeah, and to your point, Jessica, I mean, I think there's already been some at least perceptual damage that is occurring, plus real threats that I think are very visible, especially at Prairie. I mean, there are busted out front windows. There are lots of people lingering around the building. There was a woman circling the building yesterday wielding a hammer. Like I said, there is a noticeable security presence, but and they are outside the building at the station at the front door, but it is not 24 hours. And we know how perception drives reality, and we've already got elected officials saying they wish they never would have supported this type of, and here we are trying to get more affordable housing developed. And some of what we already have, we have people backpedaling in terms of their support. And I think we understand why that is, but when that drives the narrative, that also raises concerns about, are we going to have a lower bed count because we're losing units because they're no longer safe or viable as we're about to submit another application? It's just perceptually really problematic. And then there's just ultimately the most important thing, which is the safety of the people who are living in these buildings and the staff who are trying to provide quality care and support for those individuals. And I just really, it probably goes without saying, but Heartland left a really, really big mess for this community to have to try to pick up. And I applaud all of you who are trying to stay with that and make that a better situation. But I think as the COC and as leadership, we need to keep talking about it, because we need to start countering some of the opposition that I think is rallying against providing affordable housing to folks experiencing homelessness and housing instability.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tim. And just full transparency, just so you know, too, I think our concern has been that as well, just sort of what it looks like on the perception side in terms of support. We've had a lot of conversations behind the scenes with different aldermen, different folks on the council, different folks on the county board. So just know that's happening, because Jim and I feel the same way. I'm not super concerned at this point that it will mitigate any sort of forward movement on the supportive housing side. I will say, though, if the ship is not righted soon on some of these properties and more media stuff, it certainly could impact that negatively. So yeah, I think as a collective body, it would be helpful to, just in your spaces and your networks, just continue to have the conversation that this is a somewhat isolated issue. Sort of egregious negligence, if I'm just being honest, on Heartland's side. And yeah, we'll keep folks posted. And I don't know, Emily, if you want to make this an agenda item every month, I think that'd probably be solid, and we can certainly keep folks updated as best we can.
And I would say that my focus too is one of the focuses. The first focus is the participants that are living still in the building. I want to make sure that they're, we're slowly, addressing them one by one to make sure that they end up in a better place if that's what they want. And to make sure that whatever does happen with the grants, that we're aware of the bed count issue, right? That we don't want to lose permanent supportive housing beds. I mean, that's always part of my thought process too.
Yeah. I just like to point out that, I mean, these are things that Lisa was talking about repeatedly: security, improvements to development, affordable housing developments, and staffing. And from a international perspective, I don't know if anybody saw the article. There was a development, I think in the early 90s in the suburbs of Paris, where it was kind of like this vision of having affordable housing but what they didn't do again is make sure that they had the services and security on site. And now it's like this, it's a New Jack City in the suburbs of Paris, because they didn't put the investment in the services and the security for the individuals that live there. So I think as we move forward with affordable housing developments, we need to always, make sure that we're, being as loud as, we need the space, we need the units, but we also need the services that go along with those affordable housing units. I mean, I think that's our role, is to make sure it's not just here, it's not just in the United States, it's in Europe. These are lessons that we've learned, that we need to have services and security and investment in keeping those properties, up to par. I mean, the fact that we have St. Anthony's that can't, pass habitability inspections, that's ridiculous. I think that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I think one thing to keep in mind in defense of our system is a good chunk of this is on the developers and the equity investors. I mean, the tax credit process, people get into it to make money, and the buildings have reserves. And it's up to the equity investors how the reserves are dispersed or saved or allocated. And throughout the last couple of years, Heartland certainly could have had conversations with the equity investors to fund security, because that's how it's being funded now. And there's different ways you can tap into it. Obviously, when it's in receivership, it's much more of a quick process. But I think on the service side, the system has done what it can to fund the buildings. And I think we have to, as a system, hold the developers a bit more accountable when they get into these projects, when they're putting together those performance. Because I think that security piece, there's only so much we can fund through the COC or through the county. We fund the service at St. Anthony's, we fund the services at Prairie, we fund the services at Capuchin. And developers have to know what they're getting into when they do this.
Yeah, and Eric, I'm not suggesting that local government be the service provider. I'm like that, or developers, that they need to understand that part of their role is to fund the services. I mean, we had the experience with Moscone where they, expected community advocates to be there without being able to, pay for our services. And so, I mean, I think, again, that was kind of like, that was early on. And I guess that's just an indication of, where Heartland was. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys. Funding the services will be absolutely critical. As I stated, Guest House stayed there throughout this time, save a few days where it was completely unsafe. But going forward, we will certainly advocate, and so I agree with Eric and Andy completely.
All right. Very good. Important discussions, especially that, a lot going on there. So yeah, I think having this as a standing agenda item will be helpful every month. So make sure Emily puts that in there. If anybody has anything else, we are a little over, so I'll give you the rest. We'll go ahead and adjourn if that's cool with everybody. Good. All right. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thanks, take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.